Hey guys, welcome back to more homeowner association stories. In this video, our HOA charged us $830,000 for repairs, but they actually ended up doing nothing. They tried to scam an entire neighborhood. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. The title story starts like this. You know the whole fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me saying? Yeah, well, I think it's sometimes important to note that people end up in situations where that first fooling ends up locking you up and only allowing you to live your life properly if you keep stumbling into their poorly masked traps. So that was the situation too many of us ended up in when we purchased homes in a neighborhood run by an HOA that turned out to be masking a debilitating and ruthless greed. We may have been fooled plenty of times, but the real shame only came when the HOA got too comfortable in their success and finally gave us what we needed to take them to court and fight. Our lives moved in a steady pall of misery while we let our HOA do everything short of ransacking our homes to take as much of our income as we could manage. The entire neighborhood would show up to every block party because we wanted to feel like we were involved with where our money was going. All we could discuss was our day in and day out, a rut as vacation, and other such extravagant luxuries as they felt at the time were out of question with the pennies we could set aside after our home payments and the HOA fees. We thought that the peace that we stagnated in was worth something, I guess. I genuinely don't know why more of us didn't do something sooner. Hell, even to just move away might have been an option far better than losing our dignity month by month. They always had another project or general upkeep that required these funds. Of course, even if we attended the HOA meetings, these budgets were only visible to the most elite and trusted of the HOA. So we just assumed when we had fiber installed in the neighborhood or had new fencing put up or had our neighborhood signage updated that these were where our money was actually going. Even the simplest of mental math could tell us that this was hardly possible, but people fool themselves all the damn time. All these penny projects kept us docile over the years, then some big spender in the HOA woke up one morning and got creative. Whoever this was, they pushed a bill that would total to $830,000 for so-called neighborhood repairs and an overhaul of the public image. Before, our bills were at most a slight grumble at our block parties and in the aftermath of HOA meetings as we mingled. This bill, that even split amongst all the residents evenly, could drive some of the neighbors to destitute poverty if it had to be paid in the stated deadline. A grumble began a mumble, and eventually the neighborhood spoke up and made things clear. We came together and one thing ended up coming from our clarity of voice. It came from everywhere you turned. Whether or not the HOA kicks us out, we could be out of a home. A few of us woke up at this initial request and began proactive work around the neighborhood. This might have included trying to find a way out of the HOA contract by selling the home without having to still front their part of the bill, a near impossibility these people soon learned, or fundraising and side hustling in order to pull in whatever funds they possibly could. Many of these people who pulled in extra money even helped those that were more financially strapped so as to preserve the community as we had built it up in spite of the oppression from our HOA. We were 5 months into this supposed project when we heard next from the HOA about it. Those of us who had opened our eyes were beginning to see that nothing was coming out of the small fortune we had already shoveled into the HOA's pocket. Any of the neighborhood improvements that had occurred were worth less than even our normal dues would have managed to cover. Over $100,000 had gone towards some sidewalk and landscaping work. We were not completely ready to break open the conversation with the HOA, but we were certainly starting to pressure them. I think it was this pressure that caused what happened next. I will forever be grateful for that. Big Spender was beginning to feel our pressure. For some reason, this did not cause him to back away or act with caution. They had always managed to repel us somehow, and I guess they assumed this would never change. Big Spender woke up and told his cronies on the HOA board that they couldn't do anything with the funds trickling in this slow. At our next HOA meeting, the remainder of the $830,000 was put on a bill before us, and the initial deadline had been changed to 8 weeks out. 7 months total for us to conjure up this money. One of my neighbors that had been working with me on investigating the HOA's spending legitimately fainted when the time frame was laid before us. I, however, felt empowered. I knew that some idiot had completely lost his senses, and I would have much more ease pushing for the legal action that much of the neighborhood was hesitant to enlist. But in the moment I could not let my satisfaction show. I spoke up in the meeting and asked for documentation and a detailed breakdown of the repairs. I wanted to see exactly where the funds we had given up until now had been spent and where the rest was planned before I would allow anyone in the neighborhood to give another penny to the HOA. Instead, they gave me the opaque bill that they had pushed on us and simply said that we had no choice but to pay. It was either that or accept liens on all our homes. I'm so happy that I long ago convinced the neighborhood to take detailed minutes of these HOA meetings, even if I couldn't access the communications of the HOA board as things were now. I replied that we had a right to see exactly where our money was going when what they were asking amounted to nearly $1 million. They got indignant and stared down their noses at me as they accused my lack of cooperation as being what has caused so many roadblocks in the repairs to keep them hardly visible to the normal residents. According to them, I had been spreading venom into the ears of my neighbors behind the scenes, and that venom was sinking into the soil and tainting the neighborhood. They tossed fines as additional payments on my bill and the bills of those who had been working closest with me on investigating the HOA. They gave us less than a month to pay those bills before we saw a lien on our properties for damages to the community. Instead of their money, I showed up at their doorstep with a lawsuit. Fraud, mismanagement, embezzlement, and thanks to their last fines against me and my cohorts, breach of contract made up most of the various charges that I had brought against them. Then began one of the hardest months of my life. I took a month-long sabbatical from my work and devoted my every waking hour to research and preparation for the case alongside the lawyer I had hired for the work. I dug into the HOA board, everything from the personal life of the members to the full bills of every block party and meal they had ever purchased on the neighborhood's dime. By the time that month was over, I was grateful to be back at work, if only because it gave me 8 hours away from that lawsuit that even sleep could not give me anymore. The hours and the money paid to the lawyer ended up paving our trail to the courtroom. By the time we stood before the judge, we had uncovered the inflation of repair costs and the disparate gaps between many of the HOA's real income and spending since joining the HOA board. Threats, intimidation, scare tactics, and even some legitimate hate crimes all served as the HOA's tools against us who they were meant to protect. If my investigation revealed enough dirty laundry to win the case, then the subpoenas and warrants found enough to put multiple members of the HOA's board behind bars. The pocketing and illicit use of our funds was undeniable now, and to make it better, the neighborhood had come together into a true unit now. We knew about the joys and tribulations of each other's lives and genuinely cared for each other. The HOA had always had us near each other, but it wasn't until we fought together that we really became the family that the HOA always scoffed at the power of. It took 3 years because of the nature of court and the endless system of appeals, but we won. Any of us would have been driven to bankruptcy to try to do this alone, but together we were unbeatable. So now that the funds from the HOA have started pouring back in, many of us are even able to recoup the legal fees and start building up savings and investments without the HOA breaking open our piggy banks once a month. The HOA was disbanded and at least 4 of the most influential of them ended up with criminal charges that put them in prison. I think the most inspiring part of the whole ordeal had to have been when the HOA tried to push their legal fees onto our bills. Mr. Big Spender didn't tell his conspirators to leave the purpose for the funds off of the itemized bill, so we went to the news with the bills and had them lambasted with public ill will. If I've ever seen a neighborhood less in need of an HOA, then I doubt it. Now that we've fought this battle together, we know how to lift each other up and always keep the neighborhood spotless. People come and go, but our community holds up strong now, no matter what. And that is the one thing that I can thank our corrupt HOA for. And yeah, Ripe Stars, at least there's one upside to the entire situation. I like how OP stayed positive there. And if you enjoy these HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much, and the next one is an Am I the A-hole story titled Am I the A-hole for leaving a drunk girl alone at a bar? So this one involves me, 32 male, Matt, 30 male, Matt's girlfriend Lisa, 28 female, and her friend Jane in her 20s. 2 days back, it was Matt's birthday. He invited me and a few of our friends to a small birthday dinner at this restaurant, which is also kind of a bar. The plan was to eat and drink and chill. Matt's girlfriend Lisa also invited a few of her own friends. It was a group of around 15 people. I mostly hung around with my own friends and Matt, and Lisa's friends with her. One of Lisa's friends, Jane, kept trying to talk to me throughout the evening. It was kind of awkward for me as I'm an introvert, and the conversations with her felt like they were going nowhere. At around 12, I decided to head back home. Jane came up to me and told me that even she wanted to go back home as well. I was like, okay, cool, and then she asked me if I could drop her off at her house. I asked her where she lived and she told me some address that was not even on my way, so I told her to ask someone else to drop her off. She asked me if I was sure I couldn't, and I was like, yep, absolutely. Jane was visibly drunk, but I figured she had like a group of friends, so someone would give her a ride. Also, I was tired as F and just wanted to go back and sleep. The next morning I woke up to some very angry messages from Lisa. She was furious at me for leaving Jane alone at the party. Apparently they all assumed that since I was hanging out with Jane, I would have the decency to drop her back home. I told her that I talked to Jane for a total of like 15 minutes in the entire 3 to 4 hours, and I don't understand why everyone wanted me to be her personal chauffeur. All of her friends obviously think I'm a huge a-hole, and Matt has decided to stay neutral on this one. And yeah, Ripe Stars, what do you think about this? Is OP being the a-hole here, or did the others expect too much? Let me know in the comments, and now let's read a comment of OP in regards to the question of what does Jane think? And then OP said, well, apparently even Jane thinks that I'm an a-hole for not dropping her home. I'm actually kind of stumped at their behavior, not gonna lie. In regards to OP's feelings or lack thereof for Jane, well, I'm pretty sure Jane is in her early 20s. Part of the reason the conversations were awkward with her was because she sounded like a kid to me. I felt there was a generational gap. Hooking up was out of question, and to another commenter, it felt like a generation gap to me. I'm about to be 33, and I'm guessing Jane is younger than 25. A commenter then said, Matt does not seem like much of a friend. OP said, I feel Matt is just trying to not piss off his girlfriend. I don't blame him honestly, there's no consensus bot on am I the a-hole, but a majority of comments were anti-A. Update to the story, Lisa entirely stopped talking to me after the incident. Not that we were close before, but she would sometimes forward reels etc. on Instagram. Matt was also being distant, but whatever. I got busy with work and forgot about it. A week after the said incident, Matt texted me saying he needed a favor. He said he wanted me to apologize to Jane. I was like, damn, no, I'm not apologizing to her. Matt said that he knows that it's not my fault at all, and he's tried explaining this to Lisa, but she's adamant that I was an a-hole to Jane and made Lisa look bad in front of her. Apparently Lisa gave Matt an ultimatum and saying that if I don't apologize to her and Jane, Matt needs to cut me off. This honestly was some high school BS that Lisa was partaking in and very toxic, and I told Matt the same thing. But he was really desperate and pathetically sad, so I agreed to text Jane an apology. I texted her something along the lines of, hey, sorry I didn't drop you off at your place like you asked. I was really tired and was not thinking. My bad. She replied with, it's alright, don't worry about it. But this apparently made Jane think that I'm interested in her or something, and I felt like an absolute idiot for agreeing to apologize. She then started texting me a lot. In the beginning I gave monosyllabic replies, but then her texting increased a lot and I straight up hit her with, please stop texting me, I'm not interested. This hurt her and she snitched about this to Lisa. Again, high school BS, and Lisa started threatening Matt to go NC with me. They fought about this non-issue for like a week, and this made Matt realize that Lisa is really toxic, and they broke up. Jane has not tried contacting me either. Life is peaceful for the time being. The end. And someone in the comments said, sounds like Jane was not the only one causing drama and being toxic. Glad you were able to cut out the negativity in your life. OP answered, I'm glad Matt got back to his senses, to be honest. And the next one is titled, Just Figured Out Why My Local Shoe Repair Went Out of Business 10 years ago. Posted by user The Foxtrot on r/Ripe Stories, our own subreddit. So recently I had to have my bowling shoes repaired. Got some pretty good ones for free, but they had sat in storage for a long time. So the glue in them degraded, and the shoes came apart while I was taking them off after the first use. I took them to the only shoe repair shop I knew of, which was a bit out of my way, and it costed more than the shoes were worth to repair them. But the repair was guaranteed for 10 years, and the guy cut me a discount. It still costed me $64 for both shoes, but when I talked to anyone who knew anything about the general cost of shoe repair, that was actually a pretty good price. When I went to pick up the shoes yesterday, I talked with the shop owner about the shoe repair that had gone out of business in my local area, and he knew a fair bit about it and said that the guy's work was shoddy and had a lot of complaints. Then I remembered a time I walked into that guy's shop over 15 years ago. I asked him what kind of glue the guy used for his shoe repairs, and he showed me. The glue, I kid you not, was from the dollar store. And it's still sold there to this day. It's just a cheap, generic, flexible cement glue. It's not bad glue, but not great either. And when I told the guy who fixed my shoes about it, he was mortified that the other shoe repair guy would use such cheap glue and call it a quality repair. And it's no wonder he had so many complaints. Then we both had a laugh over how that guy did not know what he was doing, and then I ended up telling the shop owner about a somewhat similar experience I had with my old car and a flat tire repair. I got a flat tire and had to go get it patched. I went to a local place that had it done in an hour, $18 fixed and mounted, but then after coming out of a store later I noticed the tire looked low, so I went back to the tire repair. And what looked like a 19-year-old guy with blonde, scraggly hair came out to inspect it, and he claimed the tire only looked low, and then went out of his way to point out that he didn't recognize the brand and then spoke some more nonsense. And I, of course, was dumb enough to take his word for it, and well, days later my tire was flat again, and that time the tire was not savable, and I had to buy a new one. So the shop that repaired the previous tire the first time, I went back to complain about the repair being bad, and the guy who I was dumb enough to listen to, and the first words out of their mouth were, "We fired that idiot. He had a long list of complaints for bad flat repairs." Well, sadly, I still had to go back to where I originally bought the tires and had to buy a new one. I was dumb enough not to get the warranty when I bought tires for that car. I never made that mistake again. The guy at the shoe repair shop was quite amused by that story, and we both agreed that if you work in any kind of repair industry, then do your work right or don't work there at all. Either way, the next one is an Am I the A-hole story with a full conclusion and update, so please watch until the end to hear everything. So I, 47 male, have a stepson, 16 male, who for the purpose of this post we will call T. I've been married to my wife, 48 female, for 2 years and have 2 daughters, 7 female and 9 female, with my ex. Since the day T moved into my house, he has been nothing but disrespectful. I understand that change, especially change this drastic, moving, getting new siblings, a new parent, etc., is hard for a kid, but some of the stuff he does just crosses a line. For example, I transferred him to a really great private high school when he moved in because I wanted him to have the best opportunities. He always complains that he does not like his new classmates, that the school is too far away, it's 50 minutes further than his old school, which is practically nothing, and that he does not like the environment. He doesn't understand that later he will thank me for this. I would have killed for an opportunity like this at his age. Additionally, he always breaks rules we have set in place. Basically, I have asked him to surrender his phone to the living room at 9 PM to have some family time, but he says he wants to talk to his old friends. He constantly claims not to like the food his mother or I make, even when he has not tried it. His mom and I try to have a date night once or twice a week, and he always claims he is too busy to watch his stepsisters. We have asked him repeatedly for the passwords to his social media accounts, and he refuses to hand them over. I'm sick of the disrespect in my own house, so I set some boundaries. Either he starts treating me with respect and listening to me, or he can find somewhere else to live. Obviously, I would not really kick him out, but I'm hoping this scares some sense into him. My wife, however, said I took it too far and I need to apologize and tell him that I was not serious. I feel like this will undermine my authority though. Am I the a-hole? And now a little clarification by OP, so I just want to clarify a few things because they seem to be causing confusion in the comments. He did not change schools when he was 16, we had him change when he was 14, when he moved into my house, so about halfway through his first year of high school. Also, he did know about the change, we talked to him about it beforehand, he was not excited, but he did know that he would be changing schools. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this one in the comments. Is OP the a-hole or not? I would say, establishing boundaries is okay, but OP definitely goes way too far. You should not ask your kid for the passwords to his social media accounts. That goes way too far and definitely violates his privacy. Anyway, the first comment said, "You are the a-hole. Threatening to kick him out over minor disrespect is going too far and will damage your relationship and his trust in you. Apologize sincerely, explain your frustration and speak honestly from your heart. Also, it sounds like your stepson has been uprooted from everything he knows without having much choice, despite being nearly an adult. Was his old school a bad one? The private school may be better, but one can still be highly successful with a public education. Did you talk to him before you made this choice for him? It sounds like he is pretty resentful and he may have good reason to be. Edit also wanted to add, your kids are your kids, your stepson is not obligated to babysit them, he is allowed to say no. Are you offering to pay him? And he is entitled to some privacy, by the way. I think demanding the passwords to his social media is kind of invasive, maybe compromise on him putting you or his mom on his friend list. Comment number 2, you're the a-hole and oh my god, stop being such a whiner and stop clutching your pearls and interpreting every expression of dislike as disrespect. And now we got an update to the story and it reads like this. So thank you for everyone who has taken the time to comment, and thank you further to the people who have offered helpful advice. I did not come here to be vindicated, I came to find out if I was doing everything I could for my stepson, and clearly I am not. I'm going to try to fix what I've done wrong. I will offer him the option to switch back schools, although I understand that it might be too late and I'll see drastic ease up on the restrictions that have been set in place. Furthermore, I'm going to sit down and apologize. I want him to know that he is cared for and that I was wrong. Final update to the story, a little bit more than a year ago I asked for advice on how to deal with my stepson. I was ripped to shreds in the comments, and deservedly so. Many people assumed that I took an underprivileged kid and put him in a school full of rich kids, but that could not be further from the truth. Before we married, he and his mom were very well off. We both have really well-paying jobs. The only reason he was in a public school was because the schools in our area are really great. The only reason he was switched to the private school is because it is a STEM school and I thought that would be beneficial to him. Now anyway, onto the update. After reading the comments telling me how horrible of a stepfather I was, I felt sick. This may seem unbelievable, but I was genuinely trying to do right by him and I was beside myself realizing that I did more harm than good. My stepson never knew his father and I jumped at the chance to have that special father/son bond with him. I eased up on many of the restrictions I placed. He no longer has to surrender his phone, and while we still do have family time, it's about once a week instead of every night. He no longer has a bedtime, and while his mom follows him on his socials, I do not. I no longer demand his passwords to anything. The only time I've asked him to babysit is in the case of an emergency, but surprisingly now that I've stopped, he's been offering to babysit every once in a while. As for the school issue, he is still at the school we switched him to. We had many long talks about this very issue, and he ultimately decided to finish out his high school career at the school because while he missed his friends, he was able to recognize that his new school offered him the best opportunity to get into the college he really wants to attend. Since all of this, the relationship between my stepson and myself has drastically improved, and for his 17th birthday we offered to get him a car, and he and I had a really nice time picking out the right one. I've taken him to a few basketball games, which he loves, and I've enjoyed learning about the sport from him. He actually got a girlfriend and came to me for advice about dating, which is not something that would have happened before. I will say this, I'm blessed with an incredibly smart, kind and compassionate stepson. Other kids may not have been so forgiving, and rightfully so. I urge other step-parents out there to really listen to their stepchildren instead of automatically trying to take over. You may not be as lucky as I was. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.